Good morning. Welcome to the community briefing. Good morning. And for some of you who are joining us now, a happy new year. Good happy new year. A happy new year. We're in the year 2025, and this is our first show of the year. So thank you for joining us. We have a fantabulous guest, Terri L, and she'll be joining us momentarily. My name is Gregory Sneed, and I'm CEO and owner of Lifesaver Financial Services, providing financial coaching, financial literacy training, and wealth building and asset protection for those of you who like money. And now I'm going to introduce the 2025 queen of the community briefing, Miss Crystal Mitchell.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. We're glad to have you and see everyone that is here. Do have a fabulous guest today. I just love this woman. She's just doing some amazing things out there. So we are here to hear what those are. Prayers and blessings to all of our friends and families that have lost someone or lost their home in the devastating fires that are going on here in Los Angeles. Please, everyone, check in. If you're out there, let us know that where you are and what's going on. And our prayers are with you and your family while you go through this very difficult time. The community briefing is an inspiration of mine. Started 5 years ago now. Well, it'll be 5 years in 8 March. And we're here to bring information to you, to introduce you to those people in our communities, those stakeholders that are making things happen on our behalf, for us, for everything around us, for our community. And so that's the purpose of this platform. Is a networking platform for us all to come together as one, to join our voices in together so that we can make sure that our community, the Black community and the Brown community, we're well aware of what's happening. We are powered and supported by the Recycling Black Dollars, of which I am the co-director, and also I have my own business coaching practice as well. And the BBA, the Black Business Association, Miss Sarah Harris is the president over there. And we're monetarily sponsored by Los Angeles LDC, Southern California Edison, Wells Fargo, PCR, and PCR Development. And then there's another one in there, SoCal Gas. So we want to thank them and everyone for supporting us. And welcome back to all of our regulars. We are so happy to see you and hope all is well with you and your family. All right. With that, I am going to turn it back. Oh, and we have a fabulous team. Myself, obviously Greg, Miss Robin Billups. Hey, Miss Robin Billups, and she's going to introduce herself in a second. And Mr. Stephen Turner, who is the producer of the show, and we couldn't do it without him. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Miss Robin.
Good morning, good greetings, Happy New Year, and big blessings as we deal with some circumstances that we did not expect. However, the community briefing will carry on. You know, the purpose of us being here is for us to collectively support each other. I'm looking forward to our presenter this morning. I call her my little sister. We bonded over, I don't know how we bonded. We just bonded. The moment we met, we bonded. But what I want to say for 2025, we want to be very intentional. We want to be very, very intentional about protecting our families, protecting our morals, and protecting our money. And so as we start to schedule our speakers for the year, if there are folks that you guys deem critical to be added to our guest list, don't hesitate to refer them. And I want to say a big thank you to our regulars, you know, I call them our regular correspondents, because they're here every week. They're supportive every week. You add much value to what we're presenting. And again, I'm grateful for the team that I work with regularly. And again, let's move out in 2025 and capture everything that we can to benefit our community. Greg, back to you.
Yes, thank you. And we were chatting before we started the recording here. Here in Los Angeles, definitely keep many of us in prayer. Quite a few of folks, friends, and associates have lost homes. A few have lost lives. These fires were pretty serious. And so it's just a trying time. And I mentioned to the group here, if you see me a little distracted, I am assisting a a personal friend who is going through some trauma as a result of the fire. So I told him if he needs anything, you call me, and if he calls, I'm picking up. So thank you for your understanding there. Our guest today is Terri Batch, and she is president and CEO of the International Business Development at Global LA. And sometime I mentioned that we have some guests here who have, I go to pull up their background information, and it takes up maybe a third of a page, not even half of a page, right? And the other extreme, sometimes we'll get somebody and I'll print their background, as I have today with our guest, Terri Batch, and it goes up 4 pages. So we're certainly not going to go through all of that, but we'll say that Terri L. Batch, we don't know what the L stands for, but maybe she'll tell us, serves as the president and CEO of Global LA, a public-private partnership committed to showcasing Los Angeles as a global hub for business, innovation, and international collaboration. Under her leadership, Global LA champions the region's diverse economic landscape, fostering foreign investments and forging international partnerships. Prior to Global LA, Mrs. Batch dedicated over 2 decades to the U.S. Department of Commerce, where she most recently served as the director of Global Diversity Export Initiative. You like that global thing, huh? So, within the U.S. Commercial Services, and as the inaugural leader of the GDEI, which is the Global Diversity Export Initiative. She's also, so she was there for a while, Batch Global U.S. Department of Commerce. So she has a Master of Public Administration from USC. She also has done work at, done studies at Cal State University, Long Beach, the beach, National Taiwan University, a BS in computer science from Spelman College, one of the historically black colleges in Hotlanta. So please join me in welcoming to the virtual stage, Terri L. Batch.
Thank you, Coach Sneed. Can I call you Coach Sneed? Is that the right way to address you? Thank you all for having me. I'm so delighted to be here. I feel like I'm talking amongst friends, especially with Crystal and Robin here. I've known them for many years, and I'm so delighted to be here and to just share with you about Global LA, the work that I've been doing. I've been at this for a little bit over a year now, so I have a better grounding if we would have talked last year. It would have been a totally different conversation. So to get started, I'm going to share my screen, and I have a brief presentation um, that I developed. So I wanted to go through, kind of give you a good overview of Global LA. Can you see my presentation? Okay, perfect. So I call this LA is open for business. And I think you probably have heard the mayor say that several times. And really, LA is open for business. It has always been open for business. And I'm going to talk about what Global LA is. And hopefully, by the end of this session, you'll understand the work that I'm doing. And hopefully, I can get your support as well, because this is definitely a team effort. This is not a one-person job. It's not a one organization job, but it really is about shoring up our economy locally and taking advantage of all the things that are happening. So Coach Snee did a great job of talking about my background, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys. I don't think there's anything that he didn't mention. I do speak Mandarin. I don't think he said that. I studied in Beijing and Taiwan, so I've always had an affinity towards Asia. That is what brought me here for grad school at USC. While I was there, I had a professor who told me about a program in Taiwan, and this was after I had studied in Beijing when I was at Spelman. And so I took a year off and went to Taiwan and did an intensive language study program, and Chinese is something that has always stayed with me. It was a life-changing experience, and really put me on this trajectory in international as well. And I won't go into my whole childhood, but I grew up in Georgia and just had friends that were Chinese, and just was fascinated by the culture, by the language. And so when I got an opportunity to go, when I was at Spelman, they said they want one to study abroad. I said, oh, I raised my hand and I said, I want to go to China. And they kind of looked at me with a Scooby-Doo look like, huh? but but you know what? They made it happen. I got a scholarship to go and spent 6 months in Beijing, and this was in the 90s. It was before
Wow.
China was all that it is now. So I call it that was back in the good old days. So and throughout my career, I've been able to see the rise of China. And obviously now it's everybody's a China expert now, because it's on everybody's mind and what they've done in their economy. Also, while I was at the U.S. Department of Commerce, I was able to do amazing work. People ask me, how did I get into the Commerce Department? While I was at Spelman, I got a fellowship called the Ron Brown, and many of you might remember Ron Brown. He was our
Mhm.
Secretary of Commerce who passed away in a plane crash. Him and
Mhm.
all of the people that were with him on a trade mission. And so they had set up a fellowship back then, and that was how I got my foot in the door. I got that fellowship that paid for part of my undergrad, paid for part of my grad school, really helped me navigate because my background is not. I'm a girl from Georgia, from South Georgia, and so I didn't have the connections that a lot of people have. But I really, my path has really been ordered. And so, here I am today, having spent 20 years with the Commerce Department and now taking on this role with Global LA. And you might ask, well, what is Global LA, Terri? So my next slide tells you what it is. So it's a public-private partnership. It was set up by the mayor's office. The mayor's office, and this was under Garcetti when he was mayor. He set up an Office of International Affairs, and through that office, they did a survey of Los Angeles, and they really recognized that LA does not do a good job of telling its story around the world, and is not proactive about going out and promoting our city and promoting our region to bring in foreign direct investment. And I'm going to talk about foreign direct investment, what it is, because some people think they know what it is, but then it's like, no, that's not what foreign direct investment is. So I have to I want to just break it down just in case. But this is a public-private partnership. It was like, again, I said it was established by the mayor's office, and it's supported by businesses, by civic leaders, and also economic development organizations. So it really is a part of the business economic ecosystem here in Los Angeles. Our mission is to attract, foster, and shepherd foreign direct investment into the Los Angeles region. And also, the thing that attracted me to this position was it has an emphasis on areas that are underserved and underinvested. There are parts of Los Angeles that has no foreign direct investment, which once I explain to you what it is, you'll understand why you want foreign direct investment in your neighborhood, because it brings jobs. And the vision of Global LA is to establish an impactful legacy that creates good paying jobs as a result of hosting mega events here in Los Angeles, including the World Cup and the 2028 Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games. I have a lot of people asking me about the Olympics, and I try to help as much as I can. But I will put this caveat out there. I have nothing to do with the Olympics. I do and I don't. I'm definitely connected with LA 28. I connect the foreign companies that come to me, and they're trying to figure out how do they navigate LA, how do they establish themselves so that they can take advantage of the upcoming games. And then I also have local businesses that reach out to me and say, hey, Terri, how do I get a contract? And I feel like that's the $1 million question. Everybody's trying to figure out how to get a contract. And I would, my biggest advice to folks is, one, stay ready so that you don't have to get ready. And then two, make sure you're registered on Ramp LA, which is a site that the city has set up that when procurement opportunities do become available, it's going to be posted on Ramp LA. So, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. I am a team of one on a daily basis, but I'm supported by a board. These are my current advisory board members. I had to update it a little bit. I've added folks, lost some folks. So these are the folks that I work most closely with here in the Los Angeles region. They're the ones who kind of keep me on track, keep me motivated as well to do this work, and are partnering with me. They open up their Rolodex to me, and also help with support. A lot of this, this is a startup. This is Global LA is not it's not well funded, it's not well anything right now. It really is. Last year was really about proving that this needed to exist. And these were the folks who kind of rolled up their sleeves and supported and helped me do that. So first of all, before we get started, I just wanted to just give you a definition of what foreign direct investment is. And disclaimer, I went to ChatGPT and I said, "Hey, ChatGPT, what is FDI?" And this is what ChatGPT gave me. So if anybody has any like, oh, well, that's wrong, well, we're gonna blame it on ChatGPT because I didn't like totally fact check it, but it sounded right to me. So foreign direct investment refers to investment made by a company or an individual from one country into business interests located in another country. I mean, that's it, kind of, plain and simple. It's investment coming in from outside of the US. So I'm not courting and trying to find businesses from other states. If you're in Texas, I'm not trying to recruit you to California or anything like that. Like they come and poach our companies and take them there. That's not what Global LA is. Global LA is about the world, about looking at who are the folks around the world that are looking to invest in the US and wooing those companies to come to Los Angeles, basically. And also, it typically involves acquiring ownership or control of a business entity in the host country, often by establishing operations, purchasing assets, or taking a significant stake in an existing company. So, foreign direct investment could be a company coming here and say, okay, well, we have a presence. We have a good example of somebody I've been talking to. We have a cafe here in Paris, and we want to set up our cafe in Los Angeles. That's foreign direct investment. Or it could be, oh, well, I'm an investor and I'm looking to buy a company, and they're from the outside of the U.S. and they want to purchase an already existing company. And we'll talk a little bit about that. That's called a merger and acquisition. So there are long-term interests. These are long-term investments. This is not stocks and bonds. This is not people like, we're investing in the stock market and they're trying to invest. That's something totally different. This is all about businesses coming and setting up a lasting interest and also control too. They do control the business or have some type of say so of the strategic direction of a business. And they have influence of the managerial control in the host country. And what's considered FDI is when a foreign company owns more than 10%. So it could be it doesn't have to be majority stake, but more than 10% of a company if it's owned by, say, someone in Germany or someone in Japan, then it's an FDI investment. And there's two types of investment. There's greenfield investment. That's when they come and they establish a new operation, kind of like that cafe example I mentioned, or they're going to set up a factory. Sometimes folks want to come here and take advantage of our manufacturing base, believe it or not. So they want to build a factory, or they have a subsidiary of their company from their whatever host country they're in, and they're establishing it here. Or they're coming here and they're looking to just purchase. They're like, okay, we are leading technologists in the healthcare sector. We're looking for a healthcare company to purchase in LA. And that does happen as well. So that's a merger and acquisition. And a lot of you probably have followed the U.S. Steel being for sale, and that sale being blocked by from Nippon from Japan. The Biden administration blocked that sale. So there are cases where the U.S. government will step in and say, no, this is a threat to national security for whatever reason. They go through a whole review. There's a committee called CFIUS that goes through and they'll evaluate if something is a threat to our national security, and then they won't allow a foreign company to come in and buy it. So there is that type of a review process. So it's not like anything's open for the taking. There are limits. And you might ask yourself, well, what are the benefits of if we're in LA, why do we care? Why would we want a foreign company to come here? What's in it for us, and also what's in it for them? So the thing about foreign direct investment, what it does more than anything else, is it create jobs. And that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to create jobs. They want to boost their local economy. And FDI is a part of that. It's a part of the piece when we're talking about economic development, and it's part of that strategy. It also introduces new technologies and expertise. A company from overseas might have something that's cutting edge that we don't have in the US, so they can introduce that to us. And then also it enhances international trade and market access. So it gives them access to our consumer base here in the US, because maybe they're selling a product or something that's cutting edge, and they want to be able to sell it to us here in the US. So by doing FDI, that gets it closer to the market. So for the investor country, it diversifies their business portfolio. So they're not just focusing on their local market, they're growing globally. So really the goal for any company is to grow globally, because if I give you my former Commerce Department spiel, only 90% of the world's consumers are outside of the US. So if you're just selling in the US market, you're missing a big piece of the pie for whatever you're selling or whatever your company is. And that's the same vice versa for a foreign company. If they're just focusing on their local economy, there's a much bigger market out there for them to grow and scale their business. And then access to new market and resources. Really, they come here, it gives them access to talent. It gives them access to even investors, local investors, and helps them to grow that country or that company that's investing in our country. It helps them to grow and to scale their business. So I just want to give you some examples because maybe it still isn't clear to you. I always tell people foreign direct investment is all around us here in LA, and people might not even recognize it as foreign direct investment because it's so, it's every day to us. We don't think of Sony Pictures. Sony Pictures is owned by the Japanese. And that was, I think it was, they were acquired. I think it was Columbia Pictures before they came in and bought it. BYD is a greenfield investment where they built a whole factory out in the Palmdale region to do electric buses. And I think, I don't know if they do batteries, but they're in the electric bus business. That's a foreign direct investment. Westfield Group. So all the Westfield shopping malls, that's owned by the Australians. They came in, they invested. I remember Century City Mall, they came in and bought that, redid it. So usually a lot of times a foreign company will come in and they make things better. So it's a good thing. And then you have everything from the car companies like Hyundai and Honda that are still here. TikTok's on the top of everybody's mind because it's a ticking clock now on whether or not TikTok will stay in the US market. They say, oh, it's got to be US owned. So there's people that are getting together to try to buy that so that we can keep TikTok. And then there's everything from Airbus. There are plane manufacturers. They're Boeing's biggest competitor. That's French. Anheuser-Busch, that's owned by the Belgians. There's Siemens, German. L'Oreal makeup. When last time you used L'Oreal, that's a French company. Samsung or the phones that we purchase. If you're not an iPhone user like I am, then you're using a Korean technology. Nestle is owned by Switzerland. British Airways, obviously, is the UK. Uniqlo, if you go to the mall and go buy it at Uniqlo, that's a Japanese company, and Huawei, which is another phone manufacturer. So those are some examples of big companies. But FDI doesn't have to be big companies that come here and set up big multinationals that you recognize, right? Small and medium-sized companies. Some of these you might be familiar with. I didn't think Le Pen Quotidien, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's a Belgium company. I thought it was French. That's considered small and medium-sized. But then you have a company like Happy Socks from Sweden. They're a sock manufacturer, or there's all these different Joe and the Juice. I think I've seen that on Melrose, Dr. Smile, Aston's. There's all these different companies that they're just integrated into our local economy, and we buy their stuff. I bought Moleskine notebooks, and then even realized that, hey, that's an Italian company. I think they sell Moleskines at Costco. You can buy them in bulk. Great notebooks. So, there's things like that is just a part of our everyday lives. And it's actually foreign direct investment. And we purchase it, or we go and we buy the drinks. Everybody likes boba tea. That came from Taiwan. I remember when I was in Taiwan back in 2000, and that was a big thing in Taiwan. It took a couple of years before it got here. But that was something that Taiwan introduced to the rest of the world. So when I think about foreign direct investment, or when you think about foreign direct investment, I want you to think about it in that way. So I've got a few more slides because I want to just kind of tell you, like, okay, well, what is the work of Global LA? So what does that mean? What does it mean you're promoting LA? So one of the things I did last year, I went to Washington, D.C. The U.S. government puts on a big conference every year called Select USA. Select USA is promoted all around the world through our embassies and consulates, through the Commerce Department. And then they bring delegations. Literally, these are folks that are companies that are interested in investing in the US. They bring them to Washington, D.C., and every state in the US, every state and territory in the US is at that conference because they're courting those investors because they want them to invest in their state. California had a large delegation. There was about 28 different organizations from throughout the state. There, we probably have one of the largest delegations, and there's it's like a big trade show. Our booth was busy the whole time. And as you can see on the bottom left, Eric Garcetti was there because he was leading the Indian delegation that was at Select USA. And if you guys don't know, Eric Garcetti is now the ambassador to India. So the ambassadors are there, governors are there, heads of US government agencies are there, whether it's the Energy Department, Commerce Department, you name it. They're all there because they recognize even the White House is there. Usually the president or the vice president attends this conference because that's how important foreign direct investment is to our country and also in terms of growing our economy as well. This is not a thing of we don't want foreigners here. We do want them here, and we want them to bring their investment dollars and create the local jobs as well when they come. And I will just say that we are the number one investment location for the past 12 years. The US outpaces all other countries in terms of foreign direct investment. The other thing I did last year was we went to Paris, and that's how I know Sarah. Actually, I knew Sarah before Paris. I asked her to come, and she said yes, and it was so gracious for her to come. And then I also brought the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce with me, along with one of my board members, and we did a promotional event in Paris. This was not during the Olympics. This was before the Olympics started, and that's where we had the audience of French companies that were involved with developing the economy, the games in Paris, and now they're interested in Los Angeles. And so they're looking for any type of insight or anything so that they can do business in LA as well. So we had wonderful meetings. It was packed out in terms of companies that are interested in coming here, establishing here, trying to understand, well, what's going on in LA? How can we be a part of it? And we partnered with the US Embassy in Paris. These are a lot of my former colleagues that I worked with when I was at Commerce. And I told them that we wanted to do this promo event. So they're like, yeah, Terri, come on, we got you. And so we had a wonderful 2 days of great meetings of targeted organizations that are all interested too in partnering here in Los Angeles to help, whether it's the cosmetic sector or healthcare sector or tech sector. There's companies across different sectors that want to come here and do business. We also went to London while we were there and had key meetings. Global LA was modeled after an organization called London and Partners. I was actually supposed to have a webinar with them today. London and Partners is an organization that London set up after they hosted the Olympics in 2012. And LA studied what they did, and that's how they came up with this model for Global LA as well. And London and Partners is really, they have an office here in Los Angeles, and they have offices around the world promoting London to bring in foreign direct investment, but they also do tourism and they also do trade shows as well. So that was, it was really great to meet with them and some key companies from real estate developers to accounting firms to the company at the top right is called Here East. That was a development that they made in East London after the Olympics. They turned the media center into a whole economic development area where they've combined everything from media and entertainment and the creative sectors to tech and robotics. And they've created a center there in East London. And East London probably is kind of like the equivalent of when we think about South LA. So they were able to leverage that investment that they made. And London was also like the LA. It was a no-build Olympics. They didn't build a bunch of new infrastructure. So they took that media center and created a kind of co-working space, something for the community, which was really neat to see what they did. And it's been a model for other cities around the world too, in terms of how do you take an economically depressed area and introduce this type of a model and create and provide opportunity for people. So it was really great to take a tour of that. Okay, so you might ask yourself, well, Terri, what are your priority sectors? LA has everything. And the thing about it is in LA, people automatically think Hollywood, right? But there's more to LA than Hollywood. definitely we promote Hollywood, no doubt about it, because Hollywood needs support as well. But there's everything where we have strong ecosystems for, and where there's a likelihood to attract the right type of businesses and also create the types of jobs, because we don't just want to create any kind of jobs, we want to create good paying jobs. The area of sustainability and clean tech. So you think about renewables, think about anything, energy transformation, transportation and logistics. So we have the busiest port in North America, and 40% of all the goods coming into the U.S. comes right here through Los Angeles. So leveraging that our strategic positioning there, aerospace and the space sector. Obviously, we have a history of a strong aerospace industry here, and space and satellite and things like that have really taken off. Advanced manufacturing as well. We have a strong advanced manufacturing base here, whether it's for the healthcare sector or automotive or you name it. We have cutting edge manufacturing that is actually done already here in Los Angeles. The biotech and life sciences, a growing sector. Most people think of San Diego because they have the bio conference, but we have a strong ecosystem that is developing here as well. And then obviously entertainment. We group entertainment and tech together, but really they could be separate. But anything when you think about tech, AI, anything gaming, all of that kind of is grouped together in terms of those are our priority sectors. Now you'll notice there's no agribusiness isn't on there, fashion isn't on there. There's all kinds of other sectors. But if I had to target my time, those are the sectors where I would spend the most energy in trying to attract businesses here to LA. And then in terms of target countries, I put them in alphabetical order. So it's not like, oh, well, we one country is more important than the other. Our largest investors are mostly from Europe and also Japan. Those are when you look at the top 10, LAEDC every year does an FDI report, and it teeters between the UK, Japan, France are our top investors here in the Los Angeles area. So we definitely target those countries, but then even beyond that, looking at investment coming from the continent, from Africa, from Latin America, from other parts of the world as well, where there's interest, but we need to beef up investment from those parts of the world. And I had United Kingdom highlighted because I was going to use this slide earlier for my London webinar that got postponed. Just real quick, mega events. We have a lot of mega events coming up, even beyond the World Cup and the Olympics. We got the Super Bowl, we got US Open golf, we got the rugby. We're a rugby candidate city for the Rugby World Cup and NBA All-Star Game. There's every year there are major sporting events that are happening in LA. Those are major draws for business. It's a major draw for investment, but then also even opportunities for our local businesses to be engaged and take advantage of those opportunities. You might ask, so Terri, what's your plan? What are you focusing on this year? Here's some of the things that I'm planning to do. There's a trade show in Italy on energy transformation or energy transition, I'm sorry, that I'm planning to go to in March. And that is really, for me, when I travel or when I go overseas, someone asks me do you lead junkets overseas? And I don't have time for junkets. I've been a lot of places around the world. It's not about just going to go, but it's about being intentional about going and finding those companies that really want to come here and do business and helping them and ushering them here in and helping them integrate into our local ecosystem. So Italy is a place where I'm looking at going in March. We're also, because the Dodgers are playing in Tokyo in March, that's going to be a big deal. That's a big opportunity to promote Los Angeles during that time. Obviously, with Shohei Ohtani and all the big major Japanese players that play for the Dodgers, there are already travel packages where Japanese people will come here. They'll come for a couple of days and watch a game and go back. But we want them to come here and watch a game and invest. We want them to bring their businesses as well. So we're going to do a promotional event along on the margins of the Dodgers games, kind of similar to what I did in Paris, working with the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo, and to promote all that this region has to offer for businesses. And then I'm also looking at doing a conference with Africa, focusing on the African continent. How do we connect LA better with the continent and for trade and investment and two-way trade and investment. A lot of times people are looking at, oh, well, how do we invest in Africa? But there are investors from Africa that we want them to come to the West Coast. So creating a platform for that. And then there'll be the Select USA conference again that I showed you that happened in Washington, D.C. And just continuing to engage locally here with community organizations like the Community Briefing, like our counselor corps. We have a strong counselor corps here in Los Angeles. There's 100, close to 100 consulates right here in LA. It's the like third largest consulate district in the world is right here. So pretty much every major market, a country that you can think about doing business in, they have some type of representation here in Los Angeles. And then I want to also focus on expanding more opportunities for college students. Right now, I have 3 UCLA students that are working with me. Because this is a lean organization, I want it to be run by students and all the talent that are coming out of our local universities. And I'm equal opportunity, even though I am a Trojan. I had a class at USC last semester doing a project for me, working with LMU this year. So there's great universities here in Los Angeles and really want to leverage that talent. And then also I'm looking at doing an app competition, and I can talk more about that. I feel like I've gone long. I don't want to keep going, but that's it. Those are my plans for this year. And this is my contact information. So if anybody wants to reach out, you can send me an email. We're on all socials. You can follow Global LA. We're very active on everything, LinkedIn, all of it. And then we also have our website, which is just global.la. And that's it. Okay, I
Terry,
feel like
it's a lot of information, but it's a lot
yes.
of great information. There's quite a few questions. I got a few questions that are in the chat box that I want to pick up before we run out of time. But
Okay.
one of them, Felicia, I think I can answer this for you. Terry, did you help sponsor Mayor Bass' trip to Ghana?
No, I did not, but I was so glad she went.
Yeah.
When I found out she was going, y'all don't understand. I almost got on the plane on Sunday and got over there too, because I was like, oh, I'm so glad she was there. No, that was a personal trip that she took, and she went. It was a presidential. She represented the president when she went, because and there was I think there was like 3 or 4 people that went to be a part of the inauguration for the incoming the new Ghanaian
Right.
president.
Yes.
But I'm glad she went. I mean, it's those types of connections that Los Angeles needs to have.
Mhm.
And that's huge that she went and she was a part of that inauguration. And if you guys don't know, she has very strong ties with the African continent. She was on the Foreign Affairs Committee. She was over the Foreign Affairs Committee in Congress, and she headed up the African subcommittee. So she's got deep ties with the African continent.
That's excellent. When you talked about, you showed us the areas where this FDI activity can happen. Greg had a question. Does this include or exclude foreign investment in housing?
It does not exclude. And when I was in London, and I see Sarah here. She was there at that meeting, so she can back me up on this. We met a developer who's doing amazing things in London, and now they're looking at coming to LA, and housing was part of that conversation.
Hmm.
So it could be housing. I mean, I was thinking about in terms of where to focus and what are priorities of the mayor. And obviously affordable housing is a huge priority. I was thinking about doing like convening some type of a conference where we have perspectives, global perspectives, international perspectives of what other countries have done to address affordable housing issues, because it's a global issue. This is not something that's just specific to
Correct.
Los Angeles. This is something that every major city has had to contend with. How do you develop affordable housing? So it's
And it's
something.
not only just affordable housing, I'm just on my housing soapbox because it's also preservation of
Mhm.
existing housing, right?
Mhm.
Question: when you look at this new administration that's coming in, how do you think that that's going to affect foreign investment for the U.S.? The new administration is bullying folks to some degree about what he's going to take over, and we all know he can't get that stuff done. But the
Yeah,
rhetoric that comes out of,
say look beyond the rhetoric and follow the money,
yes,
right? Look beyond, like, because I feel like those things are distractions, and there's business deals being made over here that
yes,
people are so distracted by the foolishness and the things that are being said that they don't see that, oh, well, they just signed a deal with such and such, or they're setting they just and that I saw that in the last administration. So I would just say don't get distracted. And business always finds a way. It doesn't matter the administration. They're going to use the administration to whatever their advantage is, because they're going to know that, oh, well, in this administration, I know I'm going to be able to do this, and that's what business is going to do versus a different administration. But
Mm-hmm.
I would just say, I worked through 4 administrations. I started under George W., and every administration has their priorities. And when people have asked me about this new administration, and, it is what it is. But I will say, under previously, he was the one that started Prosper Africa, which is, if you guys know Prosper Africa, I think this
His
trying
administration started Prosper Africa,
his
because I'm certain that
administration.
homeboy didn't know nothing about it.
Well,
Keep
and we
talking.
won't go there. But I'm trying to stay neutral. Okay, I'm trying not to get too political.
Well,
But
that's
but
Robin talking.
they did start Prosper Africa,
South Central.
which was a way to push back on China on the continent. That's what they did. And opportunity zones also came out of his previous administration, which are ways to invest in areas that are disadvantaged and underserved. So I would say look for where there's
Follow the money.
opportunity to get things done, and follow the money.
Follow the money. Follow the
Yeah,
money.
because the money will be flowing. It will
No
be flowing.
question.
Yeah.
Now, another question: what countries prohibit U.S. direct investment versus, we're doing it in the reverse. We're allowing folks to come here. But I would venture that there are, well, certainly the enemies, but we're not talking about them. We're talking
Yeah.
about folks that.
No country that prohibits U.S. investment. As a matter of fact, what we do when we go to other countries and we're trying to bring their investors here, they do that all day long. They do that all day long here in the U.S. All of them do it. They come to the U.S. and they want American businesses in their countries. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, it creates jobs for them, but then also the technology transfers that happen. They need to, if depending on the country, they want the technology that we have, even though some countries are more advanced technologically than we are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's a win-win. And I can't think of any country that says we don't want American investment, because being American is actually our superpower around the world. People want to work with Americans because it's more, it's safer in the sense. Our laws, I mean, and I say this with a lot of caveats, but our laws are pretty solid. It's not like, it's very stable. America, compared to other countries around the world, is stable, and they want to do business with Americans. And I'll leave it at that. Even China, they want to do business with Americans. Even now, even with all the rhetoric and trade war and all this other stuff, when all that stuff started, they were still coming to California and wanting to engage locally with businesses in California.
So, as the year has just started and the inauguration is coming up, what are you hearing from some of the folks that you're doing business with right now? What's
A wait and see. It's a wait and see. Like the whole tariff talk. The tariff talk I think is probably the one that is the most scary to folks, because the U.S. market, if you think about it, the U.S. market has been the most freest and most accessible market to any country in the world. And that's why China really took advantage of the U.S., because they were able to pump a lot of their goods here. But it's not just China, it's every country around the world wants to come here and sell, because we have a large consumer base. We buy stuff. We people we like stuff, and that is what has driven our economy. But we also like cheap stuff. So when you talk about putting a 25% tariff on something, so those pair of socks that you're used to buying, or whatever it is or a car that you're used to buying that's a German car, or you name it, it's going to make everything more expensive. So I've had people ask me, foreign companies ask me, well, do you think it's going to happen? And I'm like, well, he talked about that with China and he actually did it. So yeah, I think it could possibly happen. So people are just kind of planning. How do you get contingency plans are you going to absorb that cost, or are you going to pass that on to your consumer? Which what we've seen is a lot of those costs have been passed on to consumers.
You mentioned earlier hosting some type of event where the folks could actually interact with what I call everyday people. We
Mhm.
would be very much interested in participating in something like that because again, I think one of the things that you said earlier about getting these students involved, I think that if we start early, we have a better footing as far as the benefit for the organization, as far as the growth of your organization, and
Mhm.
as far as what I would call next generation supporting the kind of work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think students just need to understand how the have a tangible experience on how global trade works. Because you can talk about it in theory, like, oh, okay, it's the trading between two countries. But then when you actually see like a business, even a small business, because small businesses work across borders too. And it's not just these big multinational, big conglomerates that can move massive amounts of product. Or even services, think of like a Microsoft or something like that. But when you actually like hold somebody's hand and say, okay, we're going to figure out how do you're a foreign company. How do you establish your bank account? What do you set up? How do you get your entity here? And having students help them navigate that gives them a wealth of knowledge in terms of how business is done. So I definitely am supportive of that and just want to make sure that, and the other thing, a lot of times when people want to do this kind of international work, they got to go to DC to do it. So I'm trying to create those avenues here in Los Angeles, and because there's usually only a few jobs here, whether you work at the port or maybe you work at the city, or or maybe you get in on with a company that's doing international business. But it's like the same players. I was in it for 20 years. It was always the same. In the 20 years I was there, it was always the same people. It wasn't like there were fresh people coming through. It's like you tend to get your job, and that's your job kind of for life. And so if you're a student, it's hard to kind of break in. So, and they would have to go to Washington to get those entry level type opportunities. So I want to create those type of opportunities through Global LA for students.
You mentioned that 90% of the consumer products are outside of the United States. Talk to us a little bit about franchises. Is that an avenue for folks to actually come in?
Franchises is an avenue for people to come into the US, but also for outbound as well. There's an International Franchise Association, and they work very closely with the US Department of Commerce. They do trade missions around the world. There's a guy here, a local gentleman, his name is Bill Edwards, and Bill specifically helps US based franchises go international or go global. He has a company. He's down in Orange County. I think it's Edwards Global, but that's specifically what he does. But yeah, in terms of two-way, I mean, if you think about when I think about a franchise, whether it's a restaurant, like say like a Jollibee from the Philippines, I think they own Coffee Bean as well.
Hmm.
That's foreign direct investment from the Philippines here. Or if you think about other types of franchises, whether it's like a tax franchise or some type of a business services, they
Hmm.
franchise their model and they brought it here to the US. So yeah, it definitely both works both ways.
Do you have a number that you can share? What country has the largest investment in Los Angeles presently?
It teeters depending on how you look at the data between the
Hmm.
UK and Japan.
Hmm.
If you look at the number of companies, I believe it's the UK. But if you look at the number of jobs, I think it's
Hmm.
Japan. And you'd have to go, if you guys just Google FDI report from LAEDC, they put it out every year. I think it's the UK. I think the UK is the number one. Don't quote me on that because I haven't looked at it recently. But
Hmm.
I know like France, for example, France is like number three. So, or number two, number three, depending on whether you're looking at the state or versus the county. And when you think about LA County in and of itself is a juggernaut in terms of
Yes.
the size of our economy. So, I mean, we have an economy the size of that's bigger than most countries
Hmm.
just in LA. I think it's LA and Orange County develop together is like number 21, I think, or 20th largest economy in the world. So I
Hmm.
used to have that. You'd have to talk to Stephen Chung. Stephen Chung can like rattle this off real quick.
I
He's like,
like
yeah,
him.
we're larger than this, but we're larger than this country, and but we have a massive economy here in Los Angeles,
When
and
you When you look at the tariffs that are out there right now, Delphine's question is, how have China's tariffs impact their investment in California? I know when I used to work, when I worked downtown, when I would office downtown, they bought a lot of property downtown LA
Mhm.
and then sat on them.
Yeah.
Then the market went crazy, and they had to kind of backpedal a little bit. So talk a little bit about
Well,
that.
that tariffs have actually impacted their investment, but I will tell you what's impacted their investment is the Chinese government. They put limits on how much money they could take out of the country.
Country, yeah.
So prior to like 2017, when the previous administration that's coming in was in, you saw a lot of Chinese investment coming into the US. I mean, it was crazy back then. I remember that because I was like, man, the Chinese are coming in and buying up everything.
Everything, yeah. Trophy
But then they put,
properties, a lot
yeah,
of trophy
mostly
properties.
property. Like they were, sight unseen houses and things like that. Because their currency was flowing. But then they put a currency control on how much they could take out of the country. And I think it's something like, don't quote me because I haven't looked at this recently. It's something like $50,000 or something like that. They can
Mhm.
only take out $50,000 a year. So that means that they wanted to make like a $5 million investment. They needed to go and find 10 of their friends and give them each $50,000 so they could take the money out, right? So I think it made it a lot more difficult. Not to say that it's not happening still, but it's just there's a lot more controls on the money that's flowing from China to the US. And that was kind of more retaliatory against our policies when we heightened the tariffs. And I want to say when we heightened our tariffs, they heightened their tariffs as well. So that hurt our farmers. It hurt folks that send a lot of their products, especially raw materials,
Mhm.
to China, and they take it and they create something and then send the finished good back to the U.S. market. So it's very disruptive. And I think that the idea behind it is, oh, okay, well, we want to keep our manufacturing or we want to bring manufacturing back to the US.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's been studies done. It didn't accomplish that.
Yeah,
Um,
not at
it
all.
didn't accomplish what it was set out to do. But I will say, the Biden administration didn't remove the tariffs. And I always scratch my head. I'm like, why did they not remove the tariffs? And I can't tell you why. I don't know why. I'm not in those rooms of the strategy. USTR is the organization that controls those negotiations, but with countries on trade negotiations. But I couldn't for the life of me understand why we never removed the tariffs. So those tariffs from the previous Trump administration are still on, and he's talking about adding additional
Yeah.
tariffs
Yeah.
onto those. Yeah.
This has
So it's
been
something to
good.
think about.
This has been very, very, very insightful. It's a good way to start the year out because we need to be looking at life from a global lens. I
Hmm.
want to thank Regina Thomas Barungi. Of course, I didn't pronounce your name right, for joining us today. She's in our chat box. She's with CAC Services. Serves creative access to U.S. markets for African artisans in Uganda. And I'm certain that because Terry's on today, we got a few new guests, attendees.
Regina is amazing. I will tell you,
And
she's
we will
amazing.
invite, my point is we want to invite these new folks back to potentially, provide us with a bio, and we'd like to invite you back to speak to us. The other thing that I want to say is the LA Chamber issued a note today. Are you a small business manufacturing looking to expand internationally? There's a lot of support that comes through the chamber. Let's work through our Black chamber to access these opportunities. And Terry, one last thing that I wanted to ask you, two things. One, we want you to give us some words of wisdom in Mandarin when you close us out. However, I really would like for you to tell us the relationship between the consulates and the ambassadors and how we as individuals or an organization need to support and participate with them.
Oh, so here, let me break it down for you real quick. So the consulates are here in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
Like I said, there's about 100 here. Every country you can think about that you want to do business pretty much has a representation here, whether it's official or they might have an honorary consulate.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of countries, if they can't afford to have like professional staff, they designate business people as honorary. In Washington, D.C., you have your embassies, right?
Yes.
That's where the ambassador sits. So the ambassador is that country's representative in our country. So when we have a U.S. ambassador, they're overseas representing the U.S. president in whatever overseas market they're in. When we have ambassadors here, they're representing
Their country.
their government in our country.
Mm-hmm.
Locally, I would encourage, I think you guys should get connected to the Consular Corps. There is an official like group. They call the LA Consular Corps. They meet regularly. I would say I'll get you guys plugged in with them and start showing up to their stuff because they're creating things and making things happen as well from a business perspective. They're very much so interested in trade and investment. Now, when they talk about trade and investment, they're going to talk about it from their perspective. It's going to be bringing investment from LA to their countries. It's not, okay, how do we invest in LA per se, which is what my job is. So their job is to bring folks to their country.
And that's
And
critical because
yeah,
there are folks who do want to do business outside of the U.S. And that bridging of those relationships can further develop for more activity here.
so I always tell people if they're looking to go to whatever country and do business, definitely connect with the local consular or even their embassy in Washington, and then connect with the U.S. government that is on the ground, and their job is to represent a U.S. company, help a U.S. company navigate locally in that country. So you can leverage all of those support, which a lot of people don't. I talked to so many people that have done international business, and I've asked, oh well, did you contact someone? They didn't even know anything about it. They did it on their own. They kind of stumbled through and made the mistakes or what have you, and it's like, oh no, 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 you didn't have to do that on your own. There are things in place that the US government has put in place, very robust support systems to help you do business around the world, and you can leverage that to your advantage.
Terri, you
Okay.
have been absolutely awesome. I think you guys can hear me. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for being on. I would like to introduce you to a friend of mine, actually a good family friend, and he's a client of mine. He has a global business. It's called Ocentra. It invests in mining, lithium, and other entities. And currently, they're doing a deal in Detroit to provide all the vehicle charging stations in the city of Detroit. But he's doing business in Mid and East Africa, South Africa. We have an office, and I'm part of the whole thing, part of South Africa, and his business partners from Ghana. So definitely would like to introduce you to him. We're currently trading on the penny stocks, getting ready to go public very, very shortly, probably in the next couple of months after we find out what happens. We're waiting to past January 20th. And so I'd like to put you in contact with him. He does most of his business is throughout, and he has something he's doing with China and Europe, and so that there might be some synergy there for you guys. But I want to thank you.
Thank you. I would love to meet him. Thank you.
Yeah. But thank you so much for being here. Now I know Terri actually did not know that these two individuals were married because they never talked about it, either one of them. But my tennis program, we actually are partnered with the American Heart Association. And so her husband, Eric, has been with us for the last 4 or 5 years. And I think I said something one day to him. He goes, no, he said something to me because we had interacted on Facebook together. And he goes, you know my wife? Like, who's your wife? And then it all came together. So very small world we live in. But thank you so much. This has been awesome. And we've all been talking about to our clients and our community about business doesn't have to be just done here in America. It can be in California. It can be national, and it definitely should be global. So thank you for joining us. And maybe more and more people will start thinking of their business in a global perspective and not just isolating it to one state or one country, because it does limit your ability to make money, actually. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Things that we don't even know. I'm in the tennis world, so almost all of our vendors are from other countries. Everything we play with and dress with is from another country. And the same thing for many other sports. So, thank you for bringing that to our attention. And Regina and all the other individuals that are joined us today, all the other people, thank you. Come back. See us next week. We have Stephen. You want to tell us who we have next week?
We have Karen A. Clark
Ah,
from
yes.
the Barbara Borson Performing Arts, as
Yeah.
well as TED speaker.
Yeah. So another superstar. And then the week after that, we have Miss Felicia Bell, and she's an educator, a financial educator about making money. She has an author as well. So you guys will definitely, for the month of January, continue to come back here every week. We have these great guests. And if you, as Robin said, if there's anyone that you feel you'd love to hear from, or us, we should hear from, please let us know. Stephen is our producer, so you can send the information to Stephen or myself or Greg or Robin, and we'll make sure that happens. We're looking to fill up our February calendar as well. Anyone doing anything majorly notable for Black History Month, please share that with us as well, so I can start sending that out. And if there are some speakers that is focusing on Black folks in the month of February, please send that out to us. Send that to us too, so we can put them on. I'll have them on as a guest speaker. So thank you so much, Stephen and Greg. You guys want to say anything before we close out? No. All righty. So we're going to send out blessings to all of our friends and family that are going through some very trying times, especially here in Los Angeles area, that the fires have affected them directly or indirectly. Let's hold them in prayer, and let's also make sure we're available to help them however they need. If I don't even know what that looks like, if everything that you own has been burnt up. What the heck do you do? I mean, memories, clothing, just things that cannot be replaced. It's mind boggling. There'll be a number of our loved ones and friends that will need us. So let's be there for them. So with that, guys, we want to close out today. Thank you all for being here, and we will see you next week. So have a great day. Have a great week. And we'll see you next week.
Righty.
Okay, let me cut the recording.